April 20th. And then we do have one discussion item, which is just regarding demolition at the airport. The public hearing item that we go into a little bit more depth, if I could get Lee to come on up and just explain a little bit about what we just did in that formal meeting, and then what will happen at this meeting on the 20th of April related to the bond sale.
Sure. Thank you. So the public hearings are for the actual bond orders, which were introduced when Dudley read them into the record in the meeting just prior. Excuse me. And so our clerk will publish those notices of the public hearing, which will happen on April 20th, and we'll give a chance for the public to comment on those bond orders. And the bond orders themselves, authorize the actual issuance of those bonds and states the amount and the purpose, describes the security that's going to be tied to those bonds, which is obviously your taxing authority, and then when it will take effect after its publication. And that it will be published in all four of our local newspapers. And so that's the gist of those bond orders and a requirement by state statute.
All right, very good. And so, as I mentioned in the earlier session, you actually have the proposed uses for the 2/3 bonds that are everything except the schools. We reached out to the schools, asked them for their list. According to Superintendent McManus, she really wants to get their board to be comfortable with what that list looks like. Obviously, it's a lot of new members on that school board, so it's some education that she's having to do and just getting everybody up to speed. And so we've given her a deadline around when we get a narrowed list. She kind of gave us everything that was kind of out there, which was $400 some odd million. Obviously, we're not selling that much debt for the schools at this point, and so Superintendent McManus has indicated she will be here on the 20th. She'll be able to kind of go through what those projects are. Hopefully, we can get those by the time we're back in 2 weeks from now, and we can look at them at least, prior to that. But anyway, they're working on that. And other than that, that's kind of where we are. I would ask you to take a look at our projects if you've got any concerns about them. I know Commissioner Bessie had asked me about the one of the improvements in the park side, particularly related to putting in a disc golf course at Tanglewood, trying to make sure we don't disturb too much of the kind of natural state of Tanglewood, and we will make sure and do that. But if you've got other projects that you'd really like to get a little more detail on, let us know. So, anything I missed?
Yeah, once the public hearing of the bond orders happens, then there'll be the approval in the actual meeting itself, along with the resolution that authorizes the sale and gives the LGC all the information they need to conduct the competitive sale for us.
Yeah, and one thing that is a little curious, if you look at it, of the amounts that we've talked about, we've not talked about the 100, the big bond sale that's going to be part of this is the last tranche of the $350 million that was authorized back in November of 2016. And so that, since all that work has already been done, that really, explain when that will show up for their consideration.
So the bond orders were already approved back when the referendum was voted upon, but the resolution itself that you'll see for the April 20th meeting recognizes that $105 million amount as the not to exceed par amount for the referendum voted bonds, and so that will be the only action that will be needed to sell those bonds.
All right. Any questions for Lee? Okay. So, Mr. Chairman, I'd ask for some guidance. We've been here a long time. I can go into any level of detail on the items that were on the list, or I cannot. It is completely up to you. They are fairly routine in my early pass at it and the conversations we had at the staff level. Obviously, we're going to get this agenda finalized by, I guess, a week from Tuesday, and then you'll see the detail there. But we're in the process of that.
I'd say if there's anything non-routine, Why don't you just?
Well, that's where you always get yourself in trouble.
You use the word routine to start with. So.
I know. You'll see on that agenda where there's a $600,000 budgetary item where it's interlocal agreements with Rural Hall, Tobaccoville, and Walkertown, and that is that from that appropriation that Senator Crivet made, and then she directed us to be sort of her staff in helping get that money out to those towns, and so you have that there. Couple of ARPA items that are pretty straightforward. We're finalizing those. There is a grant. There's a lot of money in the environmental world right now, and so Environmental Assistance and Protection is actually working on some grant money there. And then the purchasing items are really pretty straightforward. So I think it's, knock on wood, I think it's pretty straightforward.
All right.
And
All right.
so, the last item we have is Mark Davidson, real quickly, and I'll give you the background on that. He's going to show a quick PowerPoint just of some buildings we're getting ready to take down. And I will admit, I have done this for a long time, and I thought that there was a requirement that county commission boards declare real property surplus or a building surplus before you tear it down, because I've got to get your permission to declare that chair surplus. But for some reason, we can actually take a building down and there's not really that requirement. I can't sell the building without your approval, but we can take it down. So actually at the staff level, we're working on sort of a policy where we would not remove a fixed asset like that without your permission. I just don't want you to drive by the airport one day and see a building that you thought was yours and it's not there anymore. And so I think this is pretty routine. We'll go, Mark's already done great work at getting bids to take them down. He's got a good low bid. They're ready to roll, and this will be further improvement to the airport grounds and further improvement.
So you're just telling us in a nice way, don't come in with a list of buildings we want torn down, right?
Well, what I'm really saying to you is I'm not going to tear a building down without telling you the building's getting torn down. So I'll turn it over to Mark real quick.
So Dudley stole my thunder.
I'm
Tearing
sorry.
down some buildings. Real quick, this is a slide. It was taken, I think, July 1st, 1960, but you can see that little red arrow at the end of a runway. There used to be 4 runways. We have 2 runways now. I'm thinking the building was built in 1940s, actually to accommodate B-25s during flight training during World War II. But right now it's currently used, well, it was a couple of months ago for piston aircraft, smaller aircraft. Signature Flight Support leases it from us. And then the plan was we brought a consolidated and reinstated lease to you, and the idea was we were going to renovate this hangar. We were going to bring them back to life, and those plans changed. We had an engineer structural report done, and I got a call from James Anderson, our construction manager, and he said that building's unsafe. The trusses on the western side of the hangar are failing, and we notified everybody to get out, all the aircraft to get out. We notified the fire department, and for years the North Carolina Department of Transportation Museum had always wanted that hangar for DC-3 down there in Salisbury. And so I gave them a call, and they took a look at it, and they don't want it either. So it's time to tear this thing down. It served its purpose. It served its life, and so we got a new hangar. I actually mentioned bringing down this hangar in a previous request to you when we went for the state legislators. So we were asking for additional funding for a new hangar on the same spot. And since we're going to be tearing down this hangar, we went ahead and got quotes for a building, a house that was just donated to us back in December. It's right across from the fuel pumps there at the fleet, and then also a walkway that goes from the old Piedmont Advantage Credit Union to that hangar at 3820 North Liberty Street. So, like Dudley said, we bid it out. They got a real low bid of $39,382, and they're ready to roll. Any questions?
One quick question. For the no longer historic hangar, do you think the Transportation Museum would be interested in having a photographic sort of inside look for its archives? Sometimes they have photographic displays of items that it just wasn't practical to preserve.
Oh, you mean just come over and take pictures before we tear it down?
Yeah.
Oh, there's been a lot of pictures over the years. I can ask them, Rick Reed and people down there. Sure.
Hey, just a
Yeah.
suggestion, it's not,
Yeah.
not critical.
It's pretty run down. We call it the bird hangar because all the birds hang out in it, so it's not a pretty sight.
No action needed. Obviously, we're in briefing session, but we will go ahead and move forward with the contract, and in the future, make sure we take, just for procedural purposes, make sure to take them to you. We do have to adjust the fixed asset ledger to reflect that it's not in the asset list anymore. So, thank you, Mark. Appreciate it. And that's all, Mr.
All
Chairman.
right.
With a gentle reminder that tomorrow is April Fool's Day, I move we adjourn.
Done.